that brings us to the Dallas Mavericks, currently parked in 8th in the Western Conference somehow since the deadline, 6-5 as well, 23rd on defense, 3rd on offense, and it definitely helps having played the Detroit Pistons on Saturday. But what's going on with the defense here, Rob?
I think there's a couple of problems. One, it's just way too easy to get them in rotation. There are enough guys on the perimeter who you can just get a step on or get by. And even more of a problem than that, once you do, you can count on Dallas to overreact to that fact by the principles of their scheme and the way that they've been coached to guard those actions over the course of the season. So you get a lot of really wide open threes if you're playing the Dallas Mavericks. And that's if you're not getting a lot of really wide open shots at the rim because of the that's assuming the overreaction even works. So those are huge problems. And some of that is personnel. Some of it is just the style, to be honest with you. I think there's ways that this could be prevented to at least get them more in the, closer to their season average versus where they've been over the last couple weeks, closer to that 20th range in defense, which if you're the 3rd ranked offense in the league is probably good enough. When you have Luka Doncic on your team, which, good Lord, over the last 8 games, 37, 11, and 10 from Luka, first player in NBA history to have 5 straight 35-point triple-doubles. And yet, 3-5 in those 8 games because they can't stop anybody. So we're nearing scary times for the Mavericks in a very bad way. Like they have been wobbly. They have a high variance offense because of how much they rely on 3-point shooting, but they've got to figure out a way to stabilize.
Yeah, the offense obviously is rolling when you have an MVP candidate, a serious MVP candidate, Isaiah, like Luka Doncic. Is the offense has shown that it's pretty resilient and flexible and able to attack any kind of defense. I think it's there. The trade was supposed to make their defense more elastic, these rangier, quicker. I guess you could call both of those guys bigs, if you will, if not centers outright. That was supposed to help them be less, like Rob said, just easy to penetrate and puncture. It just hasn't worked out that way. They in theory added a lot more athleticism in that deal, but it just hasn't been brought to bear in the way that they've been hoping. Maybe it is a scheme thing and the new faces haven't been integrated in such a way that the defense can be brought to average. But I think it's definitely, I'm at like a 4 with it. I can't be too concerned when Luka Doncic is still kicking everybody's every single night. But the defense is, it's something to watch. And Lively, again, he's a rookie, right? As good as he's been, he's a first-year player. He's not going to just dominate NBA teams, right, on that end. And so I think they got some time to shore these things up. And to me, they just need to be average. They can't be 23rd. They need to be closer to 16th, 17th, 15th.
Yeah. So on one hand, there are times when it's Luka, Kyrie, and Tim Hardaway Jr. out there. And I'm like, well, no, you're bad on defense.
No.
It's like, we need to find the person who did this. It's like very clearly what you're doing here. On the other hand, they have switched to this too big. Yeah, right. They have switched to this too big starting lineup the past 2 games with PJ Washington next to Daniel Gafford. I believe Lively's coming off the bench in both of those games. On the one hand, I think it makes sense at the very least to try it out, especially as we're going through the regular season. On the other hand, I don't know how you feel about it, Rob, but it doesn't feel like despite being bigger in the front court, they play bigger. There's just kind of a, I don't want to say softness just because of what a pejorative and what all that entails there, but they're not thumping in the way that you would expect with that much heft in the front court, I would say.
Well, yeah, they're not thumping bigs. They're more stretch, but they can also kind of rebound and they can also kind of protect the basket. So you're going for a combo deal with that. But the alternative is you're starting someone like Derek Jones Jr. at the 4, who's just, we've seen historically and over the course of the season, too slight to play that position on a long-term basis. So that's why they do it, in the hopes that it can buttress their defense. Neither of those guys is a pure rim protector, but combined, maybe they could get the job done is the hope. I think the problem is that they're overcompensating for that. And really, maybe they should trust guys like Gafford and Lively more. I think the problem with Lively is he gets a lot of fouls. And that's the problem with him being a young player is he gets...
Rookie.
doesn't get the benefit of the doubt on like borderline contact, but also just over pursues and goes after stuff. And that's part of the reason I think why they're trying Gafford, to see if that can work in that spot. Hopefully, you have to hope that between those three and Maxi Kleber in the rotation, that you can cobble together some kind of defense that can work here. And some of it is also finding the balance of, I think, at the expense of Tim Hardaway, if we're all being clear about what the trade-offs need to be here, finding more time at the three for, Derek Jones and Dante Exum, who's been really good for them in spots. You need those sorts of players with Kyrie and Luka as much as you can at that three spot. Really flexible, multi-positional defenders who can ease the burden on them, because this is not working. I think the trades they've really raised the ceiling. Like, I think Gafford and Washington raised the Mavs' ceiling. They make them a better team. They give them a punch on offense and on the offensive glass that's been really important. But the floor is exactly what it's been, which is you could take a bad step at any time and all of a sudden everything collapses in one quarter and it costs you a game.
Yeah, that was kind of my concern with PJ Washington too, because it's like you, in theory, or at least on paper, get bigger in size, but do you really? And then also, does he really give you the type of stretch you need there, consistent stretch from that position if you wanted to play him and Gafford?
His defense has always been theoretical, honestly. It's like he's rangy, he's long, he's quick, he's got hops. It's like, oh, that should be a guy that really helps you on defense. It's just never really come to fruition in any consistent manner, not in Charlotte anyway.
Yeah.
So I think right now this season, I'm probably at a 3 with this team, because some of these issues might be chalked up to they're adding 2 starters functionally at this point on the fly, and having to work them in is going to take time and effort and yada yada. But unfortunately, in the broader sense, is once we get to the offseason, we're at a 1 here because they're so all in at this point. And unlike Victor Wembanyama situation where he's like halfway through his rookie season and everyone's like, where do we get him help? I mean, the clock is very much ticking with Luka, and like the Mavs themselves have pretty much admitted as much by going all in with depth. And maybe they can swing a trade where they trade some of these players together to upgrade to a superstar. But like, we're getting down there to like the scary hours with him, and this is going to become more and more of a talking point as we go through the next, I would say, year. Probably by next trade deadline, if they haven't gotten their together, this is going to be a powder keg. I mean, one question I think is relevant now, Rob, is like, do you think Jason Kidd makes it through the season? Like, well, not through the season, but makes it into the offseason?
It's tough to say, just because he does have that history of the Western Conference Finals run where he really put it together in a way that was impressive and somewhat even unexpected based on that regular season. Like, he brought that team.
He's got a history with the GM.
He also has that. He's got a little cover, which always goes a long way for coaches in his position. I think it's going to be very outcome dependent. It shouldn't be, but often coaching firing, more than any other decision made at an NBA franchise level, is. Do you make the playoffs, especially after last season not even qualifying? And what do you do when you get there to show a level of respectability? And even if they lose a first round series, if they have the kind of first round loss we've seen from them previously, like against the Clippers, where Luka is unbelievable, they're competitive in all the games, they're going down to the stretch, and they just get a little outmatched by a really talented team, I don't necessarily see Jason Kidd taking a fall for something like that. But I don't know that this team has that kind of run in them. They have the capacity to really embarrass themselves against good teams sometimes, and they just have not shown up defensively for some of these games.
So I'm different. I think they can play. Teams have a way of focusing themselves in the playoffs, right? Particularly on defense. More attention to detail. Yes. They just play harder on defense in the playoffs, and that's why I believe that they can be much better than they've shown, which again, much better than 23rd is still just average. But like, I think in the playoffs, there will be a closer, guys just play harder, more focused. It just is the case oftentimes.